Hello. Most of you already know me, but still I will introduce myself. For those who don't, I'm Elektra. I'm a psychotherapist, and I also have a specialization in social psychology, and that's the expertise with which I will be doing this talk today. I forgot the thing that I need to push the buttons. Thank you. Yes.
Elektra, do the thing.
Yes, the thing. Okay, so this talk will be about an Erasmus Plus project that we have been working on for 2 years, and when I say we, I'm including Zbigniew here. And it was a project about developing eduLARP methodology for prevention of violent radicalization in youth, and also assessing the effectiveness of this methodology. Yeah, it's working. We'll start with a project description, and then I will go into further details. It was, for those who want the Erasmus logistics, it was a Key Action 2 strategic partnership projects. The coordinator was Europe for Youth from Poland, and these were the partner organizations. So what we wanted to do radicalization are something neutral, something that is not inherently good or bad. It depends on how you use it, as many other things, as we know. And it's something that is actually very common and known to any one of us who is more or less an active citizen, because it includes attitudes like determination, being active, and persisting to change a reality that seems unjust to us. But what we wanted to focus on was the violent side of radicalization, as it can be, in our opinion, a fruitful soil for extremism and accepting violence as a justified means to an end. Of course, radicalization as a process can be triggered from many factors that can be from individual to systemic. And you can find in literature many theories about it. The model that we decided to use is a model by Dr. Mogadam. The graphic doesn't display very well in this projector, I don't know why. There was supposed to be a ladder here, okay? So these are steps. So in the ground floor we have what we call relative deprivation. That means that an individual or a group feels that they're being deprived of something that they need or of something that they are entitled to. This may stay there, but if it evolves, then it will go to the first floor where these people are adopting strategies to realize their needs. Again here, we go up, aggression starts forming and plays towards the person or the situation or the constitution that we feel is responsible for our needs not being met. We can then either stop there or continue further to moral engagement, categorical thinking, and at very, very extreme cases, terrorist acts. So, what we wanted to do was to create methodology to address many of these different steps of the radicalization process. When we are talking about methodology, of course, in this context, we are talking about eduLARPs. And also, we wanted to design and conduct research to see if these eduLARPs, this methodology, would be effective in addressing the issue, and at the end to publish a manual about it. The eduLARP scenarios that we created may be familiar to some of you. For example, Polytopia, which is a cyberpunk chamber LARP that Zbyszek and I actually have created. It concerns trust relations between people, institutions, and machines. We played this, among other times, in the last portal in Zagreb. I see some people here who were players. School Council. It's a chamber LARP again about active participation set in a universe where everybody has superpowers. Katerina has played it. Edinburgh 2.0. A chamber LARP set in the setting of Edinburgh, where a migration wave is taking place in a post-apocalyptic world. Siege of Gimleby, that was the only LARP that was actually not run in a chamber format. It was an outdoor LARP where a siege was taking place in the setting of Gimle. And then we had French Revolution, and I think the name is self-explanatory. It's a chamber LARP about the French Revolution. The cool thing about this LARP is that the characters were actually real historical figures that took part in these events. Am I going too quickly? Too slow? I'm okay. Zbyszek, do you want anything to add about the scenarios before I continue?
Just, it was also fun playing them.
It was, first of all, it was fun for us creating it. Like, I can remember times with Zbyszek being in the same room and just laughing our hearts out while designing. So, when it comes to the research, okay, I will try not to bore you too much because I'm a research and methodology enthusiast and I could talk about this, for hours. I know that it's very bearing for other people, so I'll keep it short. In order to measure the effectiveness of the methodology, we wanted to measure it on two levels. Okay, first of all, to see if eduLARP generally, as a methodology, is effective to address this issue, and on the second level, if the specific content of the specific eduLARP actually managed to give us the educational outcomes that we were intending to get. Some key elements that we included in the research design because according to literature we know that they are very closely connected with radicalization as a process was empathy. I think you all know what empathy is, and of course it's you can understand that it's a factor that is negatively correlating with radicalization. The same goes for self-efficacy, which is the belief that to believe in my own strength and ability to succeed in a socio-political context. And also the sense of belonging, so the sense of being part of something greater than me that actually represents me and makes me feel I'm involved in something meaningful. At the same time, radicalization is also correlating with the acceptance of violence. So whether the individual believes that violence is a justified means to achieve social goals or not.
What
Yes.
is the correlation of sense of belonging and radicalization?
So the higher these three are, the less likely you are to become violently radicalized. Okay?
But what if I have a sense of belonging to my terrorist organization because I feel that they are my only comrades in this world, blah, blah, blah.
That's true. But it's more like understanding that you have a role in the whole society, not in a segregational way, but belonging in the greater societal context. So thank you for the question because it gave me the opportunity to clarify. So on the other hand, the last one is positively correlating with radicalization. Other questions? No? Okay. Moving on. So, about the techniques we wanted to use. We had a very, very ambitious research plan. For those who know research, and I'm talking, mainly to Elena here. Okay, so we wanted to combine qualitative and quantitative methods. Don't we always? Okay, so we used online questionnaires, of course, but also individual in-depth interviews, focus group interviews, and observation sheets. So we were giving observation sheets to the GMs and the NPCs of the games right after the game to collect their feedback and observations about what was happening in-game. So the participants, the people testing the games, were young people from age 16 to 30 from the 4 countries, mainly from the 4 countries that were taking part in the partnership. But actually, since we also played it in Croatia, we have more than 4 countries.
10, I guess.
Yeah.
Because we also played in Poland and the youth exchange when we had 5 another countries. So
multiple countries. Okay. And okay, apart from Zagreb, that obviously that was not the case, and the ages were also very different. The main part of these participants were young people that we tried to select based on the presence of risk factors for radicalization in their lives. So we didn't go to radicalized people, and certainly not to violently radicalized people, because the project was actually about prevention, not about combating the phenomenon. And each group was highly diverse, of course. Right now, I don't sadly have the whole number of the people yet, because still some dissemination events are taking place, so the number is getting higher and higher, but I will show you some results until today. So, for example, when it comes to the questionnaire results, in the question, to what extent do you feel this eduLARP was a learning experience for you? Most people said yes. So we have the 4 and 5 being about 70% of the answer, not bad, I think. And this is from all eduLARP scenarios combined. Then, to what extent did you feel emotionally engaged in the scenario and your character? Again, we have the majority being on the moderately or very engaged. To what extent did you feel immersed in the scenario and the character? Almost same results. Would you say that this character was similar to your real personality or not? Here I think we achieved, how do you call Elena in English, this arc where...
It's a Gaussian bell curve.
Exactly. Exactly. So we hit the normal distribution here. To what extent did you feel that the game had a good flow? About 70% believed so. Now, maybe the most important questions. Do you think your participation in the eduLARP scenario influenced your empathy, understanding, self-efficacy, self-confidence, self-agency, and sense of belonging? So essentially, the factors that are preventive against the radicalization process. So I would have liked the results to be a little bit better, but they're not bad either. So about 40% say that their empathy increased. More than 60% said their understanding increased. About 35% think their self-efficacy increased. In self-confidence, that's about 50%. And about 45% when it comes to self-agency and sense of belonging. Now, the red ones means that it was not influenced. So the bad are the yellow ones. That, fortunately, are quite low. Then I will skip this, too much science. Okay, on a meta level, we had a lot of talks about how the GMing styles are actually affecting those results. And that could be like a limitation of the process to be maybe visited in a further study. Because what we saw in the analysis is that when the same game was run by different people, we actually had different results. Okay, and this is something that every LARP organizer knows that it's not very easy, to handle unless you have a specific person that runs a specific LARP and you pay for his tickets to go from country to country and run the same LARP all over again. Now, here are a few quotes that we gathered during the interviews, either the individual or the focus groups. Some people said that each moment of the game is characterized by strong emotions and such symbolic scenes that when I think about them, there is always a new reflection. Other people said that I've learned a lot about myself, I'm better with myself. I realize that I don't have to strive for a balance anymore because people accept me as I am. Good things to hear from participants. I won't go through all this, I will just show you some specific ones that have to do specifically with these factors that we talked about before. So, for example, when we are talking about empowerment and self-efficacy, a player said that every time my characters lied, cheated, manipulated, they easily achieved their goal. But when I stepped out of them, I felt guilty every time, especially when I looked at my fellow players. In real life, I will look for solutions that will let people trust me because it is more important than achieving goals. Another player said, I used to use such methods once, but in LARP, when I have to talk myself out of the situation again, it was hard for me. I noticed that I'm not like that anymore. It gives me discomfort. When it comes to sense of belonging, we generally observed the creation of an atmosphere of acceptance outside of LARP, so a bleeding out phenomenon from the LARP to the outside that we think empowered this specific factor. People were saying that we quickly developed a group identity, rituals, values, the way of talking about us. The feeling of community with people outside of our group in the game was interesting. We united only in a threatening situation. But there were moments of pure solidarity, of rapprochement between different tribes in the game. Why? Because that's how we decided to be. And this is something that we hope that the players took with them after the LARP. And on the other hand, another player said that I do not agree that caring for the common good is caring for our values. What if we are wrong? Like humans or androids, like Robespierre and the monarchists. Does it matter who is right? So that actually led to a very big conversation and reflection about ideology and values in general, which I think is very linked to Elina's presentation earlier. In in summary, I think we could say that the research points that the eduLARP methodology increased empathy, understanding, and recognition of various situations, in the sense that many players, after the eduLARPs, started being able to indicate the radicalization triggers, so it gave them also a theoretical understanding of the process and the phenomenon. Self-efficacy and empowerment were achieved through not only the content, but also the general features of eduLARP as a methodology. There was deep learning through eduLARP, like I just said, about dilemmas, the essence of social life, how the system works, criticizing values, etc. There was, we observed that the players were starting to have critical thinking about themselves and their characters, introspection and separating themselves from their roles in and out of game, testing the consequences of their decision, viewing opinions, and exploring them within the game, and analyzing various variants of the situations. And that was achieved through debriefings and also sharing perspectives with other people in group settings. And I think that was it, what I wanted to show you. And now me and Zbyszek can answer questions, comments.
I have two. First, as I have seen, to measure the impact of the activities, you have used a quantitative method like in self-assessment. Do you think that you have become more empathetic, or do you think you have become more... Exactly.
Yeah.
And you got the actual results from the qualitative methods, because there you saw objectively, not self-assessment, but the objective results.
We used counting codes.
Yeah.
As you saw in a slide that I passed. Yeah.
So maybe for this project has ended, right?
Yes.
Maybe for a next one, have you thought about getting some psychologists? I'm sure they have some fancy empathy test or something like that, and to do before and after quantitative tests.
That was my idea, exactly. To do a pre-test and a post-test.
You would have a solid proof that.
Yeah, I know. The limitation that I thought that this method would have, at least in this project, is that in order to study the impact like this with post and with pre and post test, you need to have the same people for the entirety of the project.
Okay.
And this was logistically for us at that point in time very difficult. We couldn't actually guarantee that.
And it makes little sense if it is just only one game.
Exactly. So since we had 2 years, first of all, to design the game, to design the methodology, to design the research, and to conduct it, we thought, go simple when it comes to the quantitative methods.
Yes.
But for example, if the project was to get prolonged, okay, and we have the scenarios and the methodology ready, and we can just focus on the research, I would definitely go for that.
And the second is more like a question. The last LARP was about French Revolution, and to my knowledge, among these communities that have more radicalization-prone people, young people, the level of knowledge about stuff is not that high. So how did you deal with the fact that maybe many of them didn't know who Robespierre was, getting them in the context about what was going on? Did you have any?
Do you want to answer that one?
Come up to the camera.
Also, in the French Revolution, they just got the character card in which they had a very short story. That was all they needed to know. And the event called the French Revolution didn't have to happen. There were some gamistic criteria to be met, that it even either happens or not. So they could actually go without launching the French Revolution. If they didn't knew that it happened historically, they just would not notice it at all. What was important was the negotiation and relations between the characters.
So it could have been anything else?
I'm not sure.
Well, it's just a well-designed LARP which touches this a lot of social problems
Not historical LARP.
And this French Revolution has these three states of France at that moment, which have like they are very opposite in their beliefs and ideas. So we have a lot of like heavy intellectual conflicts between them. That's just why this historical setting makes sense to play a LARP about radicalization. We didn't intend to pass any kind of historical information to them.
Thank you.
And if I can add something to that as a participant, because in the specific LARP I wasn't in any way included in the design, it was a great learning experience because what I learned from this is no matter what you do, the revolution will happen. The thing is, will you be able to sleep at night after it happens by how you behaved during it? And that gives me a lot to take as food for thought when it comes to radicalization processes.
I also wanted to answer the first question. Like Elektra said, the number of time and resources that we have was limited, and this is like within the DiveIn project, but we treated this as a starter, as a kickoff, like or a longer story or research, and we can actually talk about what methodology of research could be used to check or measure the impact of LARP, and we already like have time and opportunities to meet for that within the portal Erasmus project, and we are actually planning of launching another partnership which aims especially at designing and conducting research of measuring the impact of LARP on the players, which would not be like the aim of the project to organize conventions or events or games, but to focus on research and include the people who are professionals about it. So this is actually in the plans for the next year, also thanks to the DiveIn project in which we touched this topic for the first time.
I want in.
Okay, let's talk about it.
Nice.
Something else? Yes.
I would like to ask, if we have, I suppose the research data isn't numerous because it's small, as I checked before, it's 2 years of
Yeah.
research data, not
No. The research data wasn't gathered in the span of 2 years. 2 years was the whole project of designing the LARPs, organizing them and doing the research.
I see.
Okay?
If we have two different scenarios, Clarence,
Yeah.
one based on a historical era like French Revolution,
Yeah.
some with solid background as historical facts, and some other situation, totally fictional, but with many aspects of violence, turbulence, and something unstable as a setting. The correlation between the historical, the based one, and the biased, fictional one, how they could compare? If we have something.
When it comes to the alibi,
Yes.
I suppose that's what you would like to see, if the alibi helps or doesn't help.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, I cannot answer this question because, as you said, the data, at least the numerical ones, are not high enough for me to be able to do the statistics and give you, a valid answer. But I would have loved to be able to give you an answer because I have these questions also myself.
Is there any hypothesis?
My hypothesis is that the fictional ones would be more effective. But I don't have the data to confirm right now. Maybe, in the continuation of the project, I will have, this opportunity and I will get back to you.
And is there any site, website, or a blog to check regularly about any updates for your following projects?
Yeah. First of all, I forgot where I put the clicky thing. Okay. Clicky. So I will go back to the slide with the partner organizations. All of them have yeah, here. All of them have Facebook pages, so you can follow them and you will be, informed about updates. What I also wanted to tell you is that I mentioned the manual. This manual will be printed at the end of the month, right? Or next month? Very soon.
2021 for sure.
Yeah, very soon. So, in case any of you are interested in getting a physical copy of the manual for free, come to me or to Zbigniew, give us your details, contact details and whatsoever, and when the manual is printed, we can contact you and send you a copy. And all of the materials, as with everything within the Erasmus Plus framework, is free to use. So you can take our scenarios, you can run them without any obligation to us, apart from then contacting us and giving us feedback about how it went.
And one last question.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry for that.
Yeah.
I would like to ask Mr. Zbigniew. Probably he has seen many scenarios in his experience. The most turbulent one, the most violent expressive one, how this worked as a setting, how players manage to communicate and work together in the most dire situations. From your personal perspective.
I would like to hear.
Since you asked about my personal experience, I will tell you the image that came first to my mind, and it was in Berlin on a LARP called Edinburgh. If I remember where it was the third edition, and the one in which we introduced the migrants, who were of a different tribe than the locals, speaking different language, having different cultures and superstitions, didn't have any reasonable money or currency at them. And how did this end? Cage of metal crates was built in the town to keep the migrants inside the cage, and people were not communicating with the migrants, but throwing them a sausage or a candy inside the cage, something like this, with no physical violence, of course, and a lot of bleed in, bleed out, and relation, the rolling workshops held every day, but a lot of violence, whether social or personal, happened during the game, and we really had a lot to reflect upon. Just it already happened, so it's not a spoiler. After 3 days of LARPing and integration, they managed to find jobs, places in other tribes, and have more than half in-game currency in their pockets. And the cage was no longer there. But it really wasn't easy. But also, a funny, interesting observation is that because having a difficult start in the game, they actually cared, the players cared for achieving success in the game. So they really tried a lot, and that's why actually had a lot of social power at the end.
I can contribute to that. I was in that cage.
Oh, we have one. Please come here to show that you're alive and nothing wrong with you. Yeah, so we have a living proof that a person from the cage.
As you can see, at some point they took me out of the cage. No, we had. I was a part from the Shanidal group. The group was migrating to a territory already occupied by 3 other tribes, and for the first day of game, we had to simulate the migration journey, and which meant we actually had to walk 3 hours in the forest until arriving there. And then we were put in, I wouldn't call it cage necessarily, it's a refugee camp, let's say. And we got food, but not necessarily very tasty food. So when they threw the sausages, we actually ate them because, yeah. Yeah, for me it was I mean, I got more empathy out of it for migrants and refugees, because before that I was not necessarily something I was interested in. I mean, I knew they existed, I didn't, it was not in my reach. And after that, and all the frustrations of needing to, let's say, survive and maybe even try to thrive in this universe that they had created for us, including with it was not so easy to get jobs actually. At one point I got sword fighting training and they told me, you're a Shanidar, you don't have work permit, we are sorry. If you renounce your Shanidar citizenship, we may be able to recognize your training. So for me it was quite an experience, and I got more interested in what migration meant after that, and more interested to learn more, hear more about that, I would say.
We actually have more people here that, that took part in DiveIn projects. Would anybody like to share an experience?
Of course, I would like to.
Katerina?
Okay, so we played Edinburgh 2.0, which is like a board game LARP version of the setting of Edinburgh. And in our game, we had a tribe that was dealt a really bad hand, considering resources and cards and all that stuff. And all they could do during the game, based on the things they were given, they could easily steal resources from other tribes. They didn't have any warriors, they didn't have any technicians. It was really bad for them. And out of desperation for them, for the tribesmen to not get killed, they stole one water from another tribe. And then chaos happened because everybody was mad at them. Everybody, out of revenge, tried to take stuff from them or intentionally left them out of the resource management. And what we discussed after the LARP was that after they first, in order to survive, stole one water for the tribe, everyone was acting really bad and doing really bad stuff, and would not be held accountable because they started it by stealing our water. So
They found an excuse.
yeah, they found an excuse, like in real life, for one act of desperation to marginalize it and criminalize it, in order to find an excuse to do more terrible stuff intentionally. We didn't have cases, but
Too close to home. Too close to home. Something else?
Well,
Hello. Well, I was participating in Edinburgh 3.0, I guess, in Berlin, and it was very interesting for me to step into other different person shoes, because usually I'm actually a migrant and I'm doing a lot of bureaucracy in within European Union to get my documents, and this time I got a role of actually citizen of a city. So get all my documents all clean, and I got my job as a guardian or something, and there was also a migrant crisis, and I really didn't know how to interact, because usually I'm very open to everything since I experienced that most of the time. And yeah, and the thing is that the objective of my character was being very aggressive, very conservative, very close-minded towards the changes and towards new people coming for seeking shelter. And for me personally, it was kind of hard, and first days. But at the middle, I just realized that it's actually very easy to be, very very conservative and not thinking about other people. You just thinking about your family, your tribe, and that's it. No other borders. So it just a little bit screwed my mind, but also gave a perspective how people, how it's easily to get into these radical groups, especially when you're dedicated to your family, to your nation. It's very easily, and I think it's a very very handy lesson that I got, that sometimes maybe it's not easy to be a migrant, but you also need to realize that a lot of people, for them it's easy to choose like the other path, but we need to prevent like these people getting to other path, because like my character wasn't bad from the very beginning. She was very conservative, and maybe she just needed more training, more like lessons. And actually at the end she got, I think, we got some people from migrants in our tribe, so it was a success. Thank you.
Thank you. So say, we may not have quantitative data, but we have live participants here.
Live data.
Live data. If you don't have any more questions or comments, I think I can drop the mic. Thank you very much.